I always thought having a roommate was a good way to save money and stay sane. After college, the idea of living alone terrified me. So I moved into a cheap rental house with three other guys I met through a local roommate site. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but the rent was affordable. The house was old, but sturdy, and we each had our own room. The first few months went fine. We split chores, partied on weekends, complained about the plumbing, normal stuff. But then, about 6 weeks in, I started noticing strange things when I woke up at night, like the faint sound of footsteps in the hallway, or the bathroom light flicking on. Even though everyone was definitely asleep, I shrugged it off. Old houses creak, right? But the weird part was, it never woke anyone else up. In the mornings, I'd ask if someone had been up around 3 a.m., and they'd just look at me confused. Nah, man, I was passed out. It got to the point where I started recording short videos with my phone if I woke up and heard the noises again. I wanted proof that I wasn't imagining it. One night I heard whispering. Not just footsteps, actual whispering, like someone was muttering right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, pressed record on my phone, and crept toward the door. When I flung it open, silence. The hallway was empty. My roommate's doors were all closed. No one in the bathroom, no one in the kitchen. When I replayed the video, I could barely make out the whisper, "Oh, don't wake them." The next morning, I listened to the recording over and over, trying to catch every word. When I turned the volume up, the whispers got clearer. Don't wake them. He's still awake. That night after work, while sitting in the living room with the guys, I brought it up. Who walks around the house at like 3 a.m., I asked. Jake just laughed. You trying to scare us? Man, the only thing I do at 3 a.m. is snore. Our quietest roommate, Leo, didn't say anything. He just stared at the floor. But I didn't think much of it then. He'd always been a bit off. A week later, things got weirder. One night, deep asleep, I woke up with my throat bone dry. I got up to grab a glass of water from the kitchen. The living room light was on. I figured one of the guys was up gaming or something, but when I looked, no one was there. There was a plate on the coffee table, a few slices of bread, a cup of tea. Even creepier, someone had spread a blanket neatly on the couch, like they'd been sleeping there and just stepped out for a second. Then behind me, I heard a door creak. I spun around. Nobody. I peeked in the bathroom. Lights off. Empty. I hurried back to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep a wink until the sun came up. The next day, I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Maybe one of the guys had crashed on the couch for a while. It wasn't exactly unheard of. But then, the next night, it happened again. Around 2:45 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Soft, slow, pacing back and forth right outside my door. I held my breath, listening. The steps stopped in front of my room. I swear I heard breathing. Shallow, raspy, almost like a low wheeze. I grabbed my phone and texted Jake. Dude, are you up? Someone's in the hallway. No reply. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I waited 5 minutes, then cracked my door open. The hallway was empty, but down the hall I saw the living room light glowing again. I crept out, my phone flashlight shaking in my hand. When I peeked into the living room, I nearly dropped it. Someone was sitting on the couch. I could only see the back of their head. Dark, messy hair. They were hunched over, whispering to themselves. It sounded like numbers, just a string of numbers, repeated over and over. Hey, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. No reaction. I took a step closer. Jake? Leo? Come on, man, you're freaking me out. Still nothing. I circled around the couch, and my stomach dropped. There was no face, just skin, stretched where features should be. A mouth moved beneath the skin, mumbling numbers I couldn't understand. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, and in a blink, the thing stopped moving. It was gone. The blanket was there. The plate was there. But the figure? Nothing. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I didn't say a word to Jake or Leo. They were both in the kitchen, acting normal, arguing about cereal, joking about their shifts. Part of me wanted to scream at them. Did you see it? Did you hear it? But I couldn't get the words out. I just sat there, staring at the hallway door, waiting for something to move. Later that day, I bought a cheap motion-activated camera, the kind you can stick in a corner and check with your phone. I hid it behind a stack of books in the living room, pointed right at the couch. That night, I pretended to sleep, phone in hand, watching the feed. Hours passed. Nothing. Around 3:12 a.m., the camera flickered. For a split second, the feed glitched. Static filled the screen. Then it came back. Someone, or something, was standing in front of the camera. Too close to focus. Just a blurred shape, rocking side to side. It bent down and I could see the back of its head. That same messy hair. Then it crawled toward the couch, moving unnaturally, like its joints didn't bend the way they should. I turned up the volume. The thing was whispering again. A constant stream of numbers. Faster now, almost like chanting. I stared, frozen. Suddenly the figure snapped its head toward the camera. It didn't have eyes, just smooth skin. But I swear it saw me. The feed cut to black. I jumped out of bed, ran to the living room, but it was empty. The couch was perfectly normal. No sign of anything, except for a single scrap of paper on the coffee table, written in shaky, smudged ink. Don't watch. The next few days were a blur. I started sleeping at my friend Marissa's place whenever I could. I couldn't stand being in that apartment after dark. Not with the whispers, not with the shadows that moved just out of sight. Jake and Leo thought I was being dramatic. They laughed it off. Maybe you're just stressed, Jake said, chewing on a slice of cold pizza. Leo added, yeah, you always were the jumpy one. But every time I came back to grab clothes or shower, I found little signs that it was still there. Once all the chairs were stacked in the hallway, perfectly balanced, like some impossible tower. Another time the fridge was open and the words, "Let him sleep," were written in mustard across the door. I begged them to move out with me. I showed them the camera footage, the flickers I'd managed to save. Jake shrugged. Leo just shook his head. Neither of them believed. So one night I decided to stay, to confront it. I set up 3 cameras this time, one in the hallway, one in the living room, and one in my bedroom. I sat on the floor, lights off, phone in hand. Midnight came and went. Then at 2:47 a.m., I heard it. A door creaking open. Footsteps, but heavier than Jake's or Leo's. I looked at the hallway feed. A figure, pale, lanky, crawling on all fours, was moving toward my room. Its head twitched side to side like a broken toy. Every few feet it stopped and pressed its ear to the wall, like it was listening for something inside. Closer, closer. I held my breath as it reached my door. The knob turned. It crawled in, just out of view of my camera. I could hear its ragged breathing. It whispered, "Are you awake?" My phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "He's awake. Let him dream." The thing started to hum, a low, wet sound that made my skin crawl. And then it spoke, with my voice. "Go back to sleep." I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I waited until the thing, whatever it was, crawled back out into the hallway. It didn't close the door. It left it wide open, like it wanted me to follow. On the camera feed, I watched it slink down the hall and disappear into Leo's room. I couldn't hear anything over the blood rushing in my ears. No screams, no struggle, just silence. At dawn, I forced myself to check. Jake was on the couch, snoring. Leo's door was ajar. I pushed it open, slowly. He was there, but he looked wrong. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. His mouth hung open too, like he'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. When I called his name, he didn't flinch, didn't blink. Jake and I called an ambulance. They said Leo was alive, but not really awake. Catatonic state, the doctor told me later. No signs of trauma. Sometimes it just happens. But I knew. I knew what really did this. When I got back to the apartment that night, Jake was packing his bags. "I'm out, man. Screw the lease. I don't care," he said, eyes wild. "Did you see the footage?" I asked. He nodded. "I don't want to talk about it. Just burn it, okay?" He was gone before midnight. I sat alone in the living room, lights on, phone in hand. I replayed the footage over and over. The thing crawling, the whispers, and the part that terrified me most, when it looked directly at the camera, at me, and grinned. It had my eyes. For the next few days, I couldn't stay in the apartment alone. I crashed on friends' couches, rented cheap motels. Didn't matter. Every night I'd dream of that thing, that version of me, slithering out of the shadows, crawling up the side of my bed, breathing my name into my ear. It always smelled like mildew and old wood. When I finally went back to grab my stuff, the place felt empty. Leo's room was cleared out by his family. Jake's was bare except for the dust outlines of furniture. My room was exactly how I'd left it, except the camera was missing. I checked the living room. Gone. Kitchen. Gone. All the feeds I'd saved were corrupted, static and screeching. It was like it had wiped itself clean. I found the last camera in the hallway closet. It was turned off, but when I plugged it in, a single file appeared. No timestamp, no label. I hit play. The video was dark at first, then slowly the hallway came into view. My hallway. The bedroom doors were all closed. The thing crawled out from my room. It stopped in front of the camera, staring straight into the lens. It raised one hand and pressed a single finger to its lips. Shh. Then it turned, crawling into the wall like water down a drain. After that video, I knew I couldn't stay there. But I couldn't just leave either. I needed answers. I dug into the building's history. It turned out our apartment had been split from an old Victorian house that was converted into student housing back in the 80s. Before that, it belonged to the Miller family. And guess what? 3 generations of Millers had died inside these walls. Unexplained deaths, disappearances. One newspaper clipping called the place the Sleepwalker's House. I tracked down the only living relative, a frail old man named Walter Miller. He agreed to meet me in a tiny diner on the edge of town. His eyes were milky, but they saw right through me. I asked him what he remembered about the house. He laughed. Remember? You don't remember. You dream. That's how it gets you. I leaned in. What gets you? He tapped his temple with a trembling finger. It doesn't matter what you lock. It doesn't matter where you run. It's not the walls. It's the mirror behind your eyes. I didn't understand. Then he told me how his brother would wake up standing at the foot of his bed, eyes wide open but sound asleep. How he'd whisper things that made no sense. Codes, numbers, names of people who'd never lived there. One night, Walter found him sleepwalking into the basement, muttering, "They're not done building it yet." "What is it?" I asked. Walter smiled, teeth rotted and thin. "Your new roommate." When I got back to the apartment, the air felt thicker, like I was pushing through something I couldn't see. Ben was sitting on the couch, or at least, it looked like Ben. Same hoodie, same messy hair. But his eyes were wrong, too wide, too still. He didn't look at me when I closed the door. He just said in a flat voice, "You talk to Walter." I froze. "How do you—" "Walter's not supposed to talk." His lips barely moved. "He's part of the walls now." My heart pounded in my ears. I stepped closer. His head snapped toward me so fast I heard a crack. "Do you want to see it?" His smile was wrong. All teeth, too many teeth. "The place where we go when you sleep?" He stood. In the hallway light, I saw it. His shadow, split in two, like there was someone else standing just behind him, moving half a second later. Ben's voice echoed, doubled. "Come on, it's waiting." He turned and walked down the hall, past our bedroom, past the bathroom, to the small door at the very end, the one we'd always joked about, the closet that never opened. Except tonight, it was open, a crack wide enough to see darkness swirling inside. "Ben," I whispered. But he was gone. He'd stepped through, and then the door swung wide. Inside the little closet door, there wasn't a wall anymore. It opened into something bigger, much bigger than our apartment could ever hold. A hallway stretched ahead, cracked concrete, dripping pipes, a ceiling lost in shadow. Every step I took, the air hummed, like a million whispers tangled together. The walls seemed to breathe. Sometimes I caught glimpses between the cracks, Rooms inside rooms, people frozen mid-scream, faces blurred like corrupted video. And always at the far end, I saw Ben's shape, just out of reach, turning corners that shouldn't exist. "Ben!" I called out, my voice swallowed by the echo. Something moved behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. Only the hum, louder now, pressing against my skull like a migraine. I kept walking. The floor sloped downward. Rusty stairs. A door with no knob. Just a slit wide enough to crawl through. I did. On the other side, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. It looked like a basement and a cathedral had merged. Brick arches held up sagging wooden beams, tangled with black wires that pulsed like veins. In the center was Ben. He was standing ankle-deep in murky water, staring at something half-sunk, an old rotted mattress, with a figure curled up on it. When I stepped closer, my throat closed up. The figure was me, pale, still, eyes wide open, lips moving just enough to whisper. "You shouldn't be here," Ben said. But it wasn't Ben anymore. His voice layered over itself, echoing like a broken recording. "You made us when you dreamed of a friend. You let us in when you wanted someone close. You fed us when you spoke our names." The water rose around my feet, ice cold, pulling at my ankles. I tried to step back, but the chamber felt alive. Hands pressed from beneath the water, pulling me down. Above, Ben's grin split wider than any human face should. "Sleep, roommate," the voice hissed from every direction at once. "Sleep so we can wake." I tried to scream, but my voice cracked. The air was too thick, tasting like mildew and rust. My reflection, the version of me half submerged on the mattress, kept mouthing words I couldn't hear. Every whisper in the walls seemed to come from that frozen mouth. I backed away, slipping on the slick concrete. Something moved under the water. Dozens of shapes, pale and boneless, writhing just out of sight. "Ben!" I croaked. My eyes stung. I couldn't tell if it was tears or the heavy, moldy air. He stood there, smiling, his head tilted too far, like it was hanging by threads. "You don't understand," he said in my voice. Then it layered, doubling and tripling, until it was everyone's voice. "Rooms like this are hungry. They need storytellers. They need dreamers. They need you." I stumbled back against a pillar. A crack in the brick split open like a mouth, gasping, whispering secrets in a language that was half English, half static. I pressed my palms over my ears, but the hum sank into my bones. One of the shapes in the water rose. A head, half my face, half Ben's. It dripped black water, its eyes flickering like dying bulbs. "If you wake up, you'll still be here. If you sleep, you'll still be here. No door anymore, only hallways." My breath came in ragged gasps. I turned and ran, through the archways, past pulsing wires. The floor felt like it was breathing. I could feel every footstep in my teeth. I turned corner after corner, but they only folded back into themselves. A hallway I just sprinted down was now a spiral staircase dripping rusty water. A door led to another hallway. Same pipes, same hum, same stench of something rotten and alive. I fell to my knees, behind me, Ben's footsteps. But they were too many, not just footsteps. Crawling, shuffling, dragging. Something else in the darkness, copying my shape, my voice. Repeating every word I'd ever whispered to myself when I thought no one was listening. I slammed my fists on the floor. "Let me out," my echo answered. "Let me in." A hand, my hand, curled around my shoulder. Cold, slick, too strong. And then, quiet. The humming stopped. I couldn't move. My knees were slick with that cold, brackish water. Or was it blood? I didn't want to look down. It sloshed around me in tiny waves, rising with every breath I took. Ben's hand, my hand, squeezed my shoulder tighter. I felt bone grind against bone under my skin. "Don't fight it," his voice said. But now it was coming from inside my head and the walls, in the puddles below me. "You're already here." I tried to crawl away, but the water dragged me back. Fingers, dozens of them, pressed out from the surface like weeds breaking through soil. They grabbed my wrists, my ankles, my hair. Above me, the ceiling pulsed with a dim light. But instead of comforting me, it flickered like an old film reel. Each flash showed a different version of the room, clean and empty, just concrete and pipes, then littered with old toys and drawings, as if a child had lived here. Then the mattress again, soaked with something dark, the me on it, bloated and grinning. Stories don't die, the voices whispered. They live here. They nest in the dark. My vision split. I was looking at myself from above, like a grainy CCTV feed, while also staring up at the leaking pipes that looked too much like veins. Something warm trickled down my back. A mouth opened against my spine, a mouth that whispered every secret I'd ever wanted to bury. It spoke in my mother's voice, my father's, Ben's, all stacked on top of each other. I gasped. The water rose to my lips. I tasted mold, metal, salt. A memory surfaced. Me standing at my childhood bedroom door, hearing my parents fight, but their words twisted now, repeating, "Stay in the room, don't wake the dark." The mattress shifted behind me. I felt it breathing. When I turned, the thing on it wasn't me anymore. Or Ben. It was a stitched-together shape, parts of both of us. Its eyes rolled back as it spoke. One must watch. One must remember. One must stay. My chest tightened. My heart hammered like it was trying to punch through my ribs. The fingers around my wrist pulled harder. I felt my body being dragged, not forward, not backward, but deeper, into the floor, into the water, into whatever dream this room wanted to keep alive. I tried to scream, but the water swallowed the sound before it left my throat. All around me, faces bloomed in the puddles. Not reflections, but echoes. Some looked almost normal. A man in a business suit, a young woman with paint on her cheeks, a child hugging a stuffed rabbit. Their mouths moved in sync, but no sound came out. When I strained to listen, I heard only that same endless drip, drip, drip of the leaking pipes. They lived here, the stitched shape on the mattress said. Its voice was thicker now, weighted with static, as if it were being broadcast from miles underground. They never left. The fingers holding my wrists loosened, just enough for me to stand, but they still trailed up my arms, wet and cold, like veins of the house rooting into my skin. I staggered toward the wall. Old yellowed wallpaper peeled away at my touch. Underneath were dozens of names carved into the concrete, some so deep the letters looked fresh, some almost sanded smooth with time. My fingers brushed over them like braille. Watch. Remember. Stay, they whispered together. I turned, and the faces in the water turned with me. I saw Ben's reflection among them now, eyes wide, mouth moving wordlessly. I dropped to my knees, slamming my palms into the puddle, trying to grab him, but my hands passed through. Just ripples, just a memory. Something heavy thudded behind me. I twisted around. The stitched-together figure had slipped off the mattress and was crawling across the floor, dragging its limbs, leaving a dark trail. Its face was mine and Ben's and every other name on the wall. I scrambled backward until my spine hit the cold concrete. The figure stopped inches from my feet. Then it spoke again. This time I recognized my own voice inside it, layered under all the others. If you leave now, you carry us with you. It cocked its head, wet hair dripping onto my shoes. If you stay, you keep us safe. I squeezed my eyes shut. The room hummed, alive, vibrating through my teeth. I remembered the first night I moved in, the way the door clicked shut like it was sealing me inside something older than walls and locks. When I opened my eyes again, the stitched figure was gone. The puddles were gone. I was alone in the empty concrete room, but I knew I wasn't alone. Not anymore. A whisper came from the walls, so soft it felt like a breath on the back of my neck. Decide. I didn't stand up right away. The walls still whispered behind me. 100 overlapping voices that rose and fell like waves on a black sea. I pressed my hands to the concrete. feeling the vibration under my palms. It felt warm, like a heartbeat. The longer I stayed, the more I felt them. Their memories weren't just echoes. They were little stories playing out behind my eyes. I saw the artist, the young woman with the paint on her cheeks, dragging a canvas into this very room, nailing it to the far wall. She painted all night until the candles went out. In the morning, her landlord found her in front of the canvas. Her eyes were open, but she was gone, her final self-portrait bleeding into the plaster. Then came the man in the suit. I saw him hunched over an old ledger, scribbling names over and over, like if he wrote them enough times he could erase his own. But the names never matched. They multiplied. By the time they found him, the ledger was blank. His body was sealed into the wall behind the wardrobe. And the child. I didn't want to see the child, but the house didn't care. I heard tiny footsteps in the dark, a soft, high-pitched humming. The stuffed rabbit clutched in little arms, eyes missing, threadbare. The humming didn't stop when the footsteps did. The closet door closed. The humming went on and on and on, until the house learned the tune by heart. The more I saw, the more the air felt thick, like I was breathing their last moments instead of oxygen. And with every memory, the stitched shape crawled closer again. Not with hands this time, but with tendrils that slipped up from the puddle beneath the floorboards. I pressed my back to the cold wall. No door, no handle, not anymore. I realized the secret room wasn't hidden because someone wanted it forgotten. A whisper came from the walls, so soft it felt like a breath on the back of my neck. Decide. I didn't stand up right away. The walls still whispered behind me. 100 overlapping voices that rose and fell like waves on a black sea. I pressed my hands to the concrete, feeling the vibration under my palms. It felt warm, like a heartbeat. The longer I stayed, the more I felt them. Their memories weren't just echoes. They were little stories playing out behind my eyes. I saw the artist, the young woman with the paint on her cheeks, dragging a canvas into this very room, nailing it to the far wall. She painted all night until the candles went out. In the morning, her landlord found her in front of the canvas. Her eyes were open, but she was gone, her final self-portrait bleeding into the plaster. Then came the man in the suit. I saw him hunched over an old ledger, scribbling names over and over, like if he wrote them enough times he could erase his own. But the names never matched. They multiplied. By the time they found him, the ledger was blank. His body was sealed into the wall behind the wardrobe. And the child. I didn't want to see the child, but the house didn't care. I heard tiny footsteps in the dark, a soft, high-pitched humming. The stuffed rabbit clutched in little arms, eyes missing, threadbare. The humming didn't stop when the footsteps did. The closet door closed. The humming went on and on and on, until the house learned the tune by heart. The more I saw, the more the air felt thick, like I was breathing their last moments instead of oxygen. And with every memory, the stitched shape crawled closer again. Not with hands this time, but with tendrils that slipped up from the puddle beneath the floorboards. I pressed my back to the cold wall. No door, no handle, not anymore. I realized the secret room wasn't hidden because someone wanted it forgotten. It was hidden because the people who stayed here became it. Each new tenant added another brick to its story, and once you saw it, you were part of it. I whispered into the dark, my voice shaking. Why me? The voices answered, all at once, so close they filled my skull. Because you listened. A low groan echoed above me. I looked up. The ceiling pulsed like a lung. Hairline cracks formed a circle overhead, flaking old paint like ash. A single drop of water hit my cheek, then another. And then I realized it wasn't water. It was ink. It ran down my face, across my lips, into my mouth. Bitter, metallic, tasted like paper and mold. It was the stories, leaking down, trying to write themselves into me. I coughed, wiping my mouth, but my hands came away black. The names on the walls glowed faintly, as if the ink were alive, flowing from the cracks, from the rotting beams, from every hidden truth this place had buried under layers of fresh paint. I stumbled forward, reaching for the wall like I could scratch the names free, give them an exit. But the stitched figure was waiting. It rose up from the floorboards, taller now, its outline flickering like an old film reel. Where its face should be, there was only a shifting blur. My face, the artist's, the child's, the man in the suit, all flickering in and out of focus. "Stay," it hissed, but the hiss sounded like my own breath now. "Finish what we started." I don't remember lying down. One moment, I was pressed against the wall, ink dripping from my hair under my collar. The next, I was on my back, the cracked concrete pressing into my shoulder blades. The ceiling hovered just above my face, impossibly low, or maybe I was sinking. It felt like being underwater. Sound muffled, vision blurred. I blinked and the room changed. The walls were new, fresh paint, hardwood floor. Sunlight spilled in through a window that hadn't been there before. I heard humming, a child's voice, the same tune I'd heard in the memories. I turned my head and saw her. A little girl in a faded dress, sitting cross-legged in the corner, stitching something into a rag doll. When I tried to speak, my lips didn't move. I wasn't sure I had lips anymore. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left only my eyes behind. The girl looked up, straight at me, no, through me. Her eyes were black, like ink blots soaking paper. She said, "You shouldn't have opened the door." I wanted to tell her I was sorry, that I hadn't meant to. But the words echoed in my head instead, bouncing off the walls of my skull. Behind her, the room shifted again. The furniture rotted away, boards warped and splintered. I felt bugs crawling over my hands. But when I looked down, my hands were her hands, tiny, dirt under the nails, a needle threaded with black string. I was her now. The stitched figure loomed behind me. Us, a shadow standing in the doorway that should have been sealed. I felt her terror like it was my own heartbeat. We crawled backward, needle clenched tight, stitching faster and faster, as if the thread could hold the door shut forever. But the door didn't close. It opened wider, and the darkness behind it wasn't just shadows. It was hungry. Something grabbed my ankle. Not the girl's anymore, but mine. Suddenly I was myself again, older, heavier, but still stitched to this memory like a patch on a ragged quilt. The darkness pulled. I fought, nails scraping across the floorboards, splinters biting my fingertips. My body half in the room, half in the secret place behind the door. And the stitched figure leaned down, whispering in 100 borrowed voices, "We've been waiting for your story." I felt something slide into my mouth, ink or maybe words, the taste so bitter it made my eyes water. A single candle flickered to life in the corner. It illuminated a blank page nailed to the wall. On it, a line appeared, written in my own shaky handwriting, Tenant hash 28, still living. Then a second line, not for long. I thrashed, trying to pull free, but the stitched arms wrapped around me, pinning me like a bug in a display case. "Write it," they whispered. "Finish what you started." I don't know how long I lay there, pinned between walls that no longer matched my floor plan. A stitched figure breathing behind my ear like a draft through rotting wood. Sometimes I swear I saw sunlight slip through the cracks, but when I blinked, it was only candlelight. Always candlelight. The door, the real door, was gone. There was only the outline now, a scar on the wall. I pressed my palm against it until splinters wedged under my skin. No give, no sound. The house had swallowed it whole. Some nights I heard the girl humming on the other side. Other nights it was my own voice, warped and stretched, telling me stories I knew I never told. I tried writing them down. I thought maybe if I gave them what they wanted, the story, the confession, the ending, they'd let me go. But every word I scratched onto the peeling wallpaper only bled back into the seams. Ink turned to mold. Letters turned to rot. I lost track of time. Once I thought I heard footsteps in the hall, the real world calling me back. I screamed until my throat cracked like dry paper. No one opened the door. They couldn't. It wasn't there. The stitched figure, my roommate, my shadow, my echo, settled beside me on the warped floorboards. It watched me with button eyes, half sewn to its burlap skin. Sometimes it whispered in a voice that sounded like mine, only smaller, younger. We only wanted company. When I slept, I dreamed of all the other tenants, their stories stitched into the walls one after another. A chain of restless rooms, each sealed tighter than the last. A hidden blueprint that no landlord would ever confess to drawing. I think I'm still here because I never finished my story. Maybe that's the only way out. An ending that sticks, a line that doesn't fade. So here it is. I found the hidden room. I opened the door that should have stayed closed. And now I am one more secret behind these walls. If you ever find this, if you stand where I stood, keys jingling, lease freshly signed, don't open anything you can't close again. Because once you hear the humming, once you see your reflection stitching itself into the shadows, you're not alone anymore.